At the East Mezzanine of City Hall, 72 West College Avenue, San Angelo, Texas, for the purpose of considering the following agenda items. Number one, we'll call the meeting to order. It is 8:30. Two, prayer. Director Jones, will you please lead us in prayer?
Heavenly Father, we thank you for today. We thank you for the privilege to live in this wonderful city and pray that you would guide now our deliberations and considerations of how we use the resources you've granted to us. We ask these things in the name of your Son. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Number three, public comment. Issues or items that are not on the agenda may be raised by the public at this time. Citizens should speak from the podium, begin by stating their name, and limit remarks to less than 3 minutes. Board members may request that a discussed item be placed on a future agenda. The board takes public comment on all regular agenda items during the discussion of those items. Do we have any public comment?
Good morning, Board. Nora Navarez, Economic Development Assistant. I just wanted to give you a quick update about the business plan competition. So on August 21st was the deadline for the entry, and we received 38 submittals. And we've already gone to the second phase, which is actually notifying those that were selected to proceed to second phase, and we selected 6. So it's rolling. So we'll keep you busy. We'll keep you updated. Okay.
Cool.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else? If not, I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome our new latest director, Director Carlos Rodriguez. Welcome to the Coastal DC Board.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, look forward to your service. Number 4, consent agenda. A, consider approving the necessary corporation disbursement. B, consider approving both the regular meeting and workshop meetings of minutes of July 26, 2023. And C, consider approving the July 2023 financials. Do we have a motion?
I make motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a first by Director Gomez, second by Director Spano. Any discussion? Not all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. 5, regular agenda. A, Chamber of Commerce Economic Development Mid-Year Update and 2022 Look Back presentation by Michael Looney.
Okay, good morning, Coastal DC Board. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Regular agenda. Okay, we are Michael Looney. I'm the VP of Economic Development for the San Angelo Chamber of Commerce. The San Angelo Chamber of Commerce, for those who don't know, who might be watching this, we are a contractor to Coastal DC. We work hand in hand with the Coastal DC team, staff, board, on industrial and economic development, recruit, and business retention and expansion. That is economic gardening. That is growing those companies, those incumbent industrial companies, those primary job creators that are here in San Angelo, and recruiting new ones to come to San Angelo that work symbiotically with the resources that we have to increase the effectiveness of our industrial output. The overview. I'm going to kind of skim through this because I've got the second report that I want to show you is the 23 current up to date, so it's a mid-year report. But if you look at what we do, prospect generation, so as I just spoke about, industry recruitment, bringing new industry to San Angelo. SARMA, for those who are watching and don't know, that is the San Angelo Regional Manufacturers Alliance. This is a program that the Chamber kicked off in 2017. It is the method that we use for a lot of our recruitment efforts, in that we have relationships with a lot of heavy industrial operators, almost all of them. There's over 100 of them in San Angelo that, per their North American Industrial Classification Code, their NAICS code, identify as manufacturers of some sort. That makes them primary job creators, meaning the jobs and the economic yields that they produce act as a platform for the rest of the economy, mainly the services and retail sector of the economy. So you have both retail sector, which is circulating dollars throughout the local economy, and then you have your manufacturers, which are bringing in raw materials, manufacturing finished goods, sending them out well beyond the borders of the Concho Valley, and those fresh dollars, that fresh capital is being injected into our economy. And then industrial career promotion and training. This is a nod to those companies that we have visited on our BRE efforts, business retention and expansion efforts, that have impressed upon us that the most important tool that we can pull out of our collective toolbox to help them is job creation, job training, promotion of available jobs, and an interlink between Angelo State University, Howard College, and SAISD to groom students for employment within companies in San Angelo. The 22 economic impact, sales output compensation tallied on an annual basis at just under $29 million, so $28,758,000. That's comprised of 3 closed projects that created 55 direct jobs. And it did create 26 indirect and 22 induced. And we do this on an annual basis, so this is per year. We don't use a multiplier effect of, say, 5 or 10 years, because we think that's an unrealistic number, because it's a little potentially too optimistic, but in some cases it may not be optimistic enough if you take a company that is going to grow during that period. So we use an annualized basis. Prospect generation, this is just a snapshot of the data that we track on our dashboard system. Real-time updates are done. COSA DC staff does have access to the dashboard so they can see it if they ever want to dig into it and test drive it and see what we're doing, and they can obviously make inputs of their own. So this just shows the types of projects that we have RFIs directed to. 63% need an existing building, 73% need acreage, and 21% need under 100 employees. And we can go into these kinds of details much deeper if we need to, but this gives you a pretty good snapshot of where we are. Currently, our pipeline, if all the projects that we have in the pipeline currently, and that's the slide up to the top left, if they all land, the value to San Angelo would be $1.5 billion in investment and over 700 new jobs over a 60-month period. Industry recruitment and expansion. These are 3 transactions that were initiated before 22 and then completed in 22. That is CSA Materials, which became our first large user at the Railport. That is a division of Reese Albert. Allen's Transport, this is a project that we'd worked on for many years with a Canada-based heavy haul company, and they ended up buying a building as opposed to building in the industrial park. 3 days from letting the contract to build a new terminal, they found out that the old Detmar Transportation building was available, and they paid cash for it, bought it, and they are operational. I just talked to Mr. Fandrick, Alan Fandrick, this morning, and he is just about at 8 employees, and he is heading for a much larger group that he's going to hire once he brings power down from Canada, more power and trailers, and he has several contracts that he is waiting on the signature of. Rosenberger Site Solutions, this is the one that COSA DC made a modest contribution to. It was publicly disclosed as $75,000, which is a modest contribution. We have toured the company 3 times. They're out on Tractor Trail. They're going to be right now. They're heading for a 20-employee batch of people. They're all local employees, and they did import one guy from Pennsylvania. You remember this was the German electronics company that moved an entire factory from Pennsylvania to San Angelo, Texas. And we did, as I will note, have Kyle Harris, who's the VP of Rosenberger North America. We had him down 2 weeks ago for 3 days, and we got to know him a lot better. And the company is very pleased with their decision and very impressed with the way the community at large has supported and continues to support their operation. Of the 20 people that they are going to hire initially, they're going to eventually work up to 30. But immediately they need 20. They're hiring them in groups of 5. They set it up to where the first 5 are so well trained that they can actually train the incoming group of 5. Then that group of 5 can train the other group of 5. That's how much emphasis they put on industry training. And so we thought that was quite innovative, refreshing, and common sense. That's going to do about a $12 million a year direct impact, economic impact. When we visit with our local incumbent companies, and our recruit companies for that matter, but mostly with our BRE companies, that is incumbent industry that's here, we ask them, what is it that COSA DC, the Chamber, and our partners like Howard College, SAISD, and ASU, Engineering Department and Business Division, can do, the College of Business? What can they do to help you? And they all come back to workforce recruitment, workforce retention, and training. So we've enacted several programs: Fabricators Recruitment Day, Manufacturing Days, which is in the month of October, Industrial Career Promotion and Training. Getting into that, I'm just going to skim through it. SME Prime, this is a project that is hosted by the Society of Manufacturing Engineers. This was a project that was funded, seed money was funded by COSA DC, a little bit from the Chamber, Ethicon, and Principal LED, now Principal Sloan. We'll get to that in a minute. And this project is a way to bring high school students into the orbit of the manufacturing sector with a goal of getting them trained up and interested in the manufacturing sector of our economy locally, and deploying them out to local manufacturers of all different types, everything from welding to technical assembly to drafting to CAD drawing, logistics and supply. The 23 update, you'll look and see that so far our sales output compensation calculation is at $24 million. So at the mid-year point, we are almost at the same economic impact that took all of 2022 to complete. And this is comprised of 2 projects. So you've got 35 direct jobs, 6 indirect, and 14 induced. The number that we focus on are the direct jobs. So that would be, in this case, 35. And these are real numbers that we get from the employers. That consists of 2 companies, Principal Sloan, which used to be Principal LED. Principal LED purchased their biggest competitor, Sloan LED, making them now one of the largest LED internal components manufacturers and distribution companies in the world. The merger of Principal and Sloan, which is headquartered here in San Angelo, and the industrial park, it gives them above 50% global market share for those components. Because of that, they came to us asking for some help with finding a suitable location for extra warehouse overflow space. We ended up pointing them in the direction and helping to guide the initial negotiations with the owner of the former Ethicon Endo Center space in the Chaparral Industrial Park, which is 90,000 square feet. But there's a component of approximately 25,000 square feet that Principal Sloan ended up doing a long-term lease on. It's an off-market property, but they did a long-term lease on, and they're going to move their R&D division into that. Equipment Share is a company that we started working with in 2021. They are based out of Tennessee. They are a heavy industrial equipment rental cooperative, and a very sharp company. We were very impressed with them. They came to us seeking some potential assistance from COSA DC or the county. We began to work on that. They went quiet for a little while, which they told us they would do. They had to finish up closing a large transaction in McAllen, Texas. They came back, and they ended up just moving forward very quickly without any public-private assistance. This is a company that ended up purchasing the old AEP building on 19th Street. So it took that building that had been out of service when AEP left it 5 years ago. We had a lot of activity on that building, but just could never find the right fit. And so they purchased that building. They have title to it. They own it. It's a good use. What we like about that use is that their business will be very viable here. We did put together a study for them showing other heavy equipment rental companies in the area. They said that doesn't bother them whatsoever. They know that they can be competitive, and they've basically rebuilt the building. And if you're to look at the interior of it, it's essentially a brand new building. So we're really pleased with that investment that they've made in San Angelo. And then Angelo Solar, Walt, Mike, and I toured the Angelo Solar project. This is not a COSA DC direct project, but it is a county project that is a 1,200-acre, 200-megawatt solar power array. It is in the Grape Creek Independent School District. It is just to the west of the of 2288, near the state park, and it's a $334 million investment. So at peak, they have 425 employees. Once the array is operational, it'll be down to 2 employees. So it's obviously a very highly automated way of developing a $334 million investment literally in our backyard. And that is a taxable asset that is on a 40-year contract. So we were pleased to keep you all informed on what kind of projects we're also doing in the county, because we also contract with Tom Green County, acting effectively as their economic development department. If there's any questions, I'm glad to answer them at this time.
So, thank you, Michael. Any questions from the board?
That was 6 pages, Max. Huh?
That's good.
Yeah, I'm
That's
telling you,
good.
man.
All right.
I also wanted to add, if I might, I brought a little show and tell here for those who weren't aware. Last month, the Chamber and our partners were awarded the Texas Economic Development Council Workforce Excellence Award, which we went to Dallas to receive. And this is, again, an award that we were very pleased to receive on behalf of our community. And the submission highlighted the relationship between the Chamber, Costa DC, the county, Howard College, SAISD, and Angelo State. We bundled it all together in our submission. And we were told anecdotally that that was a very strong submission. And during the conference, we were approached by several economic development officers who wanted to know a lot more about how we did it, why we did it, and understand kind of the grassroots level of investment. And so, anyway, so that's it. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to talk.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I think we're good.
I will add that our pipeline is full, so when you see the year-end report for the rest of this year, I think you'll see some good results. We feel very confident about some of the projects that we have in the pipeline, and I think we're going to be possibly talking about those a little bit more in exec. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll move forward with item B, public hearing regarding an expenditure in an amount not to exceed $200,000 for land, buildings, equipment, facilities, and improvements required or suitable for the promotion of development and expansion of affordable housing. A project authorized pursuant to Section 505.153 of the Texas Local Government Code, and authorizing the board president or his designee to negotiate and execute any required documents, subject to city council approval. Presentation by Bob Seaman.
Thank you. This is a public hearing on a project that was approved by the board, I believe at their January meeting. Public hearings are required on prior to undertaking any project where we intend to spend a half-cent sales tax. And it says, except as provided by subsection B, a type B corporation shall hold at least one public hearing before spending money to undertake a project. So that's why we're doing the public hearing. That's more for the public's knowledge than the board's. Y'all are aware of that. This is for the Blitz program for affordable housing. Over the past 15 years, the city and affordable housing have conducted a series of what we call Blitz programs, where we went into neighborhoods and we would identify a block or 2 blocks or whatever, and send volunteers in, or sometimes contractors, to just do a basic neighborhood improvement, painting the outside of houses, new roofs if they needed a new siding, maybe cleaning up alleys and what have you. The city has seen a marked improvement in growth in those areas, to include a lot of private sector investment. It's kind of they were sort of like a seed project sometimes, where if you improve a few of the properties on the block, everybody starts looking at it and saying, hey, that looks pretty good, I think I'll do that with mine. And so it sort of gets contagious. It's been part of the city's neighborhood revitalization plan. And as I said, it's included quite a few things. Funding for it has been through the Affordable Housing Program, through Costa DC funds, and also through Community Development Block Grants, which are federal funds. And those funds are no longer available for this program. Costa DC approved $200,000 to be used for the continuation of the program with an added roof repair component. So we're going back to doing some of that. But instead of a one-day event where we went and hit a neighborhood and do an entire neighborhood or an entire block, because of the, I don't want to say the lack of need, but there are far fewer areas now that need a whole block or a whole area to be done. So the new program is going to do it sort of on a one-for-one basis, where they go in and do one house at a time. But these will all be houses that are in eligible areas, target areas. The city will leverage Costa DC funds with some federal funds to target up to 25 homes for siding and roof repairs. And Costa DC did approve this at their meeting on June 28th. I'll answer any questions the board might have, and if not, we can open it for public comment.
Any questions from the board? No? And just as a reminder, just for myself, because it's been a few months, this is not any new money. This is money that was already in the budget. We're just reallocating it towards this project. Right?
Correct.
Okay.
And it comes out of affordable housing funds, not out of economic development.
Right, so it was already in the budget. We're just reallocating the use of it. Okay. Okay. Well, if there's no questions, we'll open it up to public comment. It is 8:52. Do we have any public comment? Seeing none, we will close it for public comment. Cool. Anything else we need to do on that, Brandon, or we're good? Okay. So we'll move on to C. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Okay. Discussion and board input regarding Costa DC's strategic priorities. Presentation by Michael Dane.
Good morning, Michael Dane, Interim Economic Development Director and Assistant City Manager. We've had a couple of conversations about strategic priorities. Our attempt today is to begin to firm that up and move us along in a discussion about where we focus our efforts. Clearly in the past, what we've worked on has to do with transportation enhancement. As far as planes go, work at the airport, we have the Skyline Aviation Hangar project in process. Bob, I think they've received their permit for demolition.
They've received their demolition permit, and yesterday I received all the architectural and civil plans for the building, so they are moving ahead.
Our commitment on that one is $3 million, up to $3 million. Non-potable water supply study is in progress. Recall that as advocates for development at the airport, we want to make sure that there's adequate water supply for fire suppression systems. And so we have, in cooperation with the city, engaged an engineering firm to study that very thing. The cost of that was $83,000 and change, plus some travel and incidentals, so roughly $90,000. And I think we're expecting to receive those results in September sometime.
Yeah, we received a preliminary report. They had some things they had to go back and look into. So we're looking to see the final report about the 15th of September.
Okay. And that may, if we have more questions at that time, that may turn into another milestone. We may ask them to go back for more.
That's correct.
ASU pilot training, we've talked about that, and that is on the agenda later today. We'll talk more about that. The ask from ASU is up to $2 million, and we'll talk more about that later on. Trains, San Angelo Rail Park. Oh, I've got notes here. I'm supposed to be
All
watching
those
my
notes
notes.
we prepared for you, Michael.
We have approximately $542,000 in that as it is at this time. We are in the process, we submitted a proposal to the city for acquisition of city land, which is immediately east of the rail park. And we hope that there is a cooperative solution associated with the opportunity to expand that rail park. And as far as costs, we don't have an idea right now, but I anticipate that some cooperative agreement can be reached on that also. The big one for us, water and sewer extension to the rail park, either as is or as expanded. The current estimates for that, which actually are a few months old at this point, approximately $9.5 million associated with our, or the owner's, what would be traditionally the owner's burden associated with extending those utilities. The city is starting to see continued growth in that part of town, and they are nearing the point where they may need to expand the capacity on their side of the system also. And I think that, Bob, was at 11 or 12?
12 million.
12 million. And
That's for an additional, or a new elevated storage tank, and then some other system improvements that will be required just to get water to that area and maintain storage for fire protection and what have you.
So is that an additional 12 to the 9 million?
That's
Okay,
correct.
just
It is
to
an
clarify.
additional.
and that would typically or traditionally be a city-side burden. But we will, as we work through the land issue and as we move closer to the need to extend those utilities, we'll be working closely with the city on that also. Automobiles, we participate in Ports to Plains. Our cost is approximately $60,000 per year. Our mayor chairs that organization at this point, and we have a couple of board members, I think, was it you, Max, and Rick, who have the opportunity to go to a conference this month. Staff feels like it's important for the board to be able to participate if they want, and so you don't have to have a position on their board in order to go to the conference. We support you going to the conference, whatever conference they have, to participate and be part of that activity. I-14 Gulf Coast Strategic Highway, they are not having regular meetings right now, and there are no membership dues right now, but that could heat up and that could change, or they might continue to do what they're doing. But we have traditionally had a part in that also. And so transportation summary. Airport, these are projects which are done or under contract at this point. Airport, 4.1, almost 4.2 million. Rail yard, 542. Ports to Plains, 58 and change, for a total of 4.8 million. We will come back to those future projects. For example, the big one for the rail yard and ASU, we'll address those again at a future slide. Industrial Park, another key item for the Development Corporation. Phase 1, approximately 1.1 million in that. We had, in 2 grants, we had $864,000, which contributed, so we had very little local money in that one. Phase 2, 5.3 and change. We had $1.25 million in an EDA grant associated with that. And we'll come back to the industrial park also. Also, with the industrial park, one of the things we think is key, we think that's an asset ready to go. It's out there just waiting. And so we think it'd be appropriate to come up with some sort of a marketing or promotion campaign associated directly with the park. We're not real estate guys or commercial real estate folks, so we're going to need advice on that. Is that appropriate or not? But we think it's a key asset that's ready, and we need people to know about it. So I think we want the board's advice about what we do there. And we think that's key for the next year also.
Mike, just going back to the previous slide on the industrial park, the 6 million. So that number there, is that what we're in it for? Or is
Yes.
that what we've spent?
That's
kinda-
gross cost. So for example, on Phase 1, to the extent that we had 864,000 in grant revenue, you could say we've got 225 approximately in local money in that phase in total. And for Phase 2, if we've got 5.3 and change, and we had grant money of 1.25, then we're into that for about 4.1 million in local money.
So then when we sell off those properties and they're invested and companies come in, that revenue comes off of that, or is that just a separate, like this is what we spent on it?
This is the gross.
Right.
What we have left, Phase 1 is already into
Right.
positive ground. We're already,
Right.
we
Yeah, that's
already have
kinda where I
profit
was
on that.
going, yeah.
Phase 2, we're still working on that. Phase 2 was more expensive, and we haven't sold as much of it, so we're still working on that. And, but for us, we believe it's a key asset, ready to go. Bob, I think you've already sold.
Yeah, we've sold 9 acres. That'll bring in about 400,000. We haven't closed the property yet. We have a signed contract, and I was just dealing with Development Services yesterday. They have submitted the subdivision plat. They want to plat the property first before they close on it. So they've got their survey done. They've submitted their plat. It's an administrative approval of the plat, so that will be done fairly quickly. And it'll get us about 400,000 in revenue. Those numbers are a little, they look a little staggering, and I'm going to do this from memory, but I think we're about $2.5 million ahead on Phase 1 right now. And if we sold everything in Phase 2 at the current rate of 45,000 an acre, we would see another $1.5 million to $2 million that would be then available to reinvest in the park. So the money that, if you will, the money that from the sales in Phase 1 went into the development of Phase 2.
Right. So we're playing with the house money, so to speak.
Correct.
Okay.
And we may want to review all of that as if we were to jump into some sort of a campaign to promote that park, we may want to review all that before we do that, make sure that what we're charging is consistent with what we think is appropriate for the current market.
Yeah. Oh, and that rate has gone up because a few years ago, weren't we selling that for about 25,000 an acre, I think?
It was 25,000 an acre for 5 acres and above, 29,000
Right.
for less than 5 acres. We've bumped that to 45,000, and that's just based on costs incurred to date. Another one of the things we want to look at as part of the marketing is we may want to get another appraisal done. And in the past, we've been our own worst enemy on appraisals because when they do the comps, we're the comps. So whatever we're selling for is what the comparables are.
Right.
We may want to broaden that a little bit and look at a new appraisal, but we'll get into that one.
And we may not want the differential anymore. We may want one price per acre for Phase 1 and Phase 2. I don't know.
Yeah.
We needed real estate advice.
Yeah, well, no, and I think it's good, and I think it's good for the public to know that, we are adjusting to the market, and obviously we've increased prices as we've invested more money. So we're doing, I feel, our due diligence, so appreciate that.
All right. Marketing. Business development. Obviously, one of our priorities is to stimulate the recruiting and growth of local businesses. So we handle business recruitment and BREP through our contract with the chamber. And we have an updated scope of services that was recently approved I'd like to work with them. They have a sophisticated internal reporting system. I'd like to take a look at what they do and have them provide for us some sort of a dashboard, kind of a routine report associated with business recruitment and a separate one for BREP, just so that it's easy to review, see what kind of activities going on, and to take advantage of items they're already doing. We don't want to recreate the wheel. They've got internal mechanisms for tracking that. We want to take advantage of those, and we want to support that. One of the things we have kicked around is the idea that we would promote BREP and make sure that and have a campaign to support that program. I'd like to hear what their thoughts are on that also. And we're coming up on that annual cycle. Recall that I think in October, they are required to present to us a strategic plan for what they plan to do. They gave us something here recently, so it's not going to be too tough to update that. But I think in October, we'll want to hear again what their plan is and if there is a need to partner on any kind of promotion or anything like that. Business plan competition. The current budget is about $80,000, but during the budget talks, we talked about upping that number. And we said we would come back and revisit that. And so we can do that at some point also. And then the BRC partnership. We have budgeted approximately $150,000 to operate the BRC. The concept of one-stop shop was critical at one point, and we still think it's valid. We still think that the BRC adds value. I think did we do the annual renewal with the SBDC?
Yes, sir. Yes.
We have some space available that's going to be available.
Yes, as a matter of fact, our temporary person, they've already moved out as of Monday. So as of right now, we have 3 vacant offices now in the incubator area.
In the incubator. Mm-hmm. So not a lot of hard initiatives associated with the BRC. Just continue to operate and make sure that it serves the SBDC's needs also. Quality of life. There's been more rumblings in the last year or so about quality of life issues. Chadburn Streetscape, we were asked to participate in phase 1 of that. I think most people feel that work that was done was very positive, very successful. And I know that the city is talking about a phase 2. I think they're trying to take it from where it ended on the north end all the way to the loop through the curve. But I don't think that's certain. I think they've applied for grants. At a budget meeting yesterday, we had a budget work session, but before that we had a brief regular meeting where we took advantage of a little bit of excess capacity on the debt service rate to capture that money and make it available tentatively for Chadburn Streetscape. So they are scrounging to try to come up with money to do that. So I would anticipate we would receive an invitation to participate in that. I don't have any idea at what level. Riverbank stabilization. I don't think we've had a formal presentation, but we're having problems with the riverbanks falling into the river, collapsing in the downtown area. And so council's been talking about a stabilization effort running from about the downtown area to Bell Street. They just approved a contract to do the engineering and some of the studies that go with that kind of project. And they have applied for a big grant. I think the grant they applied for was $5 million. And so we may be asked to participate with the local match piece of that. I don't know. And then the key is, we've talked about quality of life some, and I need you to think about what your ideas are for quality of life. What do you think would be a quality of life project suitable for Coastal DC, if any? I don't need your answers now, but that I think it's We don't just let others determine what that is. I think we have input into that also. On the ballot side, where we're at on that ballot side is what's left is long-term water supply support and affordable housing. Long-term water includes debt service. We transfer money from there to the city's water fund to help with debt service where they have borrowed money for long-term water supply issues. We reimburse the city for its costs associated with participation in the West Texas Water Partnership, and we're paying the annual contract amounts for the Fort Stockton Water contract. I believe we need to have an update on this. We need to have an update on the West Texas Water Partnership. I talked to city staff who said we're at a critical juncture, which may make a difference in how far we bring you forward in the history of West Texas Water Partnership. And so at some point, they'll turn me loose to bring to you a presentation about that. Or we may bring, in the past, at times we've had presentations where we brought an engineer into town who is familiar with that history also. Affordable housing at $335,000 a year is a ballot item. And we have talked, as we've worked through affordable housing this year, we have talked about the need to, let's review that program. Let's decide whether or not we want to keep doing what we're doing or take a look at something else. By the way, the non-blitz that we just had the public hearing on is an opportunity for us to take a look at another way to do some of that work. And so we want to kind of watch that as we talk and consider where we think we're going to get the best bang for the buck going forward on that. So on our radar, a reminder, rail park utilities, $9.5 million, that's an estimate. There is a piece of that for $5.5 million, which I think was a sewer lift station, which came straight out of a city bid at another location, I think near Bentwood, for a lift station. And so Bob updated his estimate based on what we saw there. And of course, $12 million on the city side. Somebody would have to tell us whether theirs is necessary in order for ours to happen. That would be a decision they'd have to make. Rail park expansion. We don't have an idea. While we hope for a small price tag or a pay-as-you-go kind of a price tag, we don't have an idea on that. ASU pilot training is $2 million ask, and we'll visit that later on in the agenda. Also on our radar, we again think we ought to come up with a strategy for marketing the industrial park. A question about the Chadburn Streetscape project and bank stabilization projects. To give you an idea where we're at on money, on the ballot side, there's approximately $8 million that's unassigned, and it would be available for, in this case, long-term water supply. And we'll talk more about that sometime. Economic development. That's where most of these projects could be funded from. So if the current number is 5.8 and we have 9.5 plus rail park expansion plus 2 million plus marketing plus Chadburn Streetscape plus bank stabilization, you can see we very quickly eat up that 5.8. And so identifying priorities, I think, is important. Yes, sir.
So that number 5.8, that's unspent funds from prior fiscal years plus our expected revenue for current fiscal year?
Yes, sir. I think that is the correct way to phrase that. And so that, to me, leads into another important point. We would not, if we approved all of these projects today, we would not have to write the checks today. And so finance is working on those cash flow projections so that we could make a determination about what we could reasonably commit to at any period in time. Yes, sir.
I believe that 5.8 million does not include the 250,000 that was allocated for the
Tech Tower.
For the
That's right.
technology tower. I knew it was 250,000, I forgot what it was for. That project was, we didn't have a signed agreement on that at the time that we did this. We now have a signed agreement with them.
So closer to 5.6. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so just in terms of straight expected revenue coming in for the fiscal year, on the economic development side, what's that rough number? Tina, know?
We're looking it up, just one second. Budgeted at 2.9 million in revenue,
On the economic development side?
coming a little over that.
And we expect to exceed that.
Thank you.
So, and just to that point, I kind of just thought that was going through my mind. So go, if you could go back a couple of slides, I'll tell you when to stop. Just another one, another one.
One more?
Yeah, all right. So this is that we're, go back to the ballot side. All right, no, sorry, two more forward.
We're going forward or back?
Forward, move forward for a second. All right, right here, right here, right here, okay. So this ballot side, to your point, Dr. Jones, comprises 72% of our budget.
You're
And
right.
that annual
That's
budget
correct.
has averaged historically about $10 million. So we have, that we collect on the half-cent sales tax, right? So this is for the public and kind of for the board. But, so 72% of our budget, almost $7 million annually, goes towards these two items right here. Obviously, affordable housing is $335,000 out of that $7 million budget. So we are heavily invested in long-term water, right,
Yes,
as a
sir.
corporation.
That's correct.
If you go back, now I want to count, just for my, because I lost count, how many slides there were before. So that's one, keep going, 2, 3, no, wait, are we going the right way? From the beginning. Go all the way to the beginning, all the way to the beginning, to where we were at that ballot slide. I want to see how many slides we had before that, is what I'm trying to get to. Okay, so that's your first slide. Okay, that's the first slide. That doesn't really count as cover. So we got 1, let's count, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 17 slides to cover the 28% of the budget that we're using. So, I mean, I think that just illustrates in my head anyway, how resourceful we need to be as a board to maximize the 28% of the budget that we have to get, was it 16 or 17? I lost count already. 17 slides worth of stuff that we're involved in that I think sometimes as a board, because we meet monthly and we tackle projects as they come up, we're focused on, you know, the scope of that month, and I think sometimes we lose sight of, when we take a step back, all of these projects that we're involved in. So to your point, you know, the 2.9 for this year, roughly $3 million that we have, the things that we've already invested in are committed to, in addition to what's on the radar, as you have here, that we have kind of an opportunity to, you know, maximize and leverage, versus 72% of our budget is already tied up in a good way on the long-term water projects and affordable housing.
The other thing is that we don't list in this presentation all of the economic development projects that have occurred in the past, that are pending at this point, or that our chamber folks are working on at this
Right.
point. That would be a lot more slides.
Absolutely.
And so anyway, these are the items that are on our radar. We think they've gotten to this point because they are priorities, but at some point, I think we're going to want to hear that from you. But you're right, resourcefulness is the key. We actually function from an economic development perspective, financially function, like a much smaller city because of the restrictions in the ballot. And so we do have to be resourceful. Administrative matters, while they're not strategic priorities, we think they're important, and we need to set some goals internally about some of these items. comprehensive policy review. We want to look at all the policies, make sure that they're up to date. That really should be something that every organization does periodically, is review the policies, make sure they're current, and update the date on them, last reviewed.
I think we need a policy for the policies.
We'll put that under review.
Yeah.
The city services agreement, we've had some talk about that, and so we would like to take a look at that. Chamber of Commerce agreement, we got a fresh approval on the agreement, so that's not a burning issue, but we really want that to move forward smoothly. And really, for me, we want to take a look at that in that we want that dashboard reporting so we can quickly and succinctly look and see what they've been up to and that what they're working on is consistent with our priorities. And then corporate bylaws. So I'm not sure how much that would get through in 1 year, but I think we ought to look at it. So at this point, that's kind of where we went, but we want to open the discussion. No rules. We're kind of counting on you to bring ideas. Even the new folks that serve on multiple boards, if you've got great ideas, we'd love to hear them. And we can talk about that today. We can leave you to go chew on that for a month and come back, whatever you prefer. We're not required to take any action today.
Any comments, questions from the board?
Yeah, so over the last year, we've had a subcommittee that's kind of been able to drill down into some of these documents and policies. So I felt, as I participated in that, I felt like that was a fruitful way to move forward and to identify some issues to bring back to the full board.
Who do we have on that subcommittee currently? I think Ruben was on there, and he's gone, and I think John Barrio was on there. He's gone. Do we want to say that the new tenants for those chairs inherited the liabilities of their predecessors?
Well, I think Max and I were on it, so I don't know who the third.
No, I wasn't on that.
You weren't on it?
No, not on that
Max.
committee, no.
Oh, that's right. Just me.
Yeah.
So I need help.
You're the subcommittee at this point.
So.
We're here to serve you.
Stephen replaced John, right? And then Carlos replaced,
Carlos and Rick.
Well, there we go. There's a committee.
unless
Steve?
any one of y'all have any interest?
I'd be in trouble for saying it. Steve came out of the city, so he's familiar with our stuff, and he could do that work too.
And I
And
think
you're a
that-
policy person,
So,
we got a good group, so whatever
Okay.
y'all want.
yeah. Well, we could, I mean, we don't have to decide right now, but I
That's
think
right.
we could, discuss it, and then decide who wants to be there, obviously, and move forward. But I completely agree with Director Jones that I think, having the committee review that and all the policies and so forth, and coming up with a game plan of a timeline to review those policies on an ongoing, basis for the future, so we stay ahead of it and we're not, being reactive, but we're being proactive in those reviews and keeping up with, the market and times and so forth, so.
One of the keys is this slide was meant to show what we had done in transportation in those three different areas. If ASU and the rail utilities moves forward, that 4.7 will move up by 11 million. And so we will be very transportation heavy, appropriately so if that's our priority. And but instead of the airport being far and away the largest area, if both those move forward, the rail yard will be far and away the largest. Will double what the airport. So with that in mind, we'll keep moving ahead, and we'll try to tune this up as we can't do it all at once, so we'll try to focus and develop an action plan. And then at some point, if you have further guidance, we'll adjust our action plan accordingly.
Okay. Well, I think, yeah, at the least, we definitely want to have this as a future agenda item, maybe in the fourth quarter, October, November, or something like that as a follow-up, and make sure that at the minimum, we have that committee in place and, with some direction and guidance on how to move forward. And I think probably before year end, want to take another look at these strategic priorities as we, enter the next year and come up with our game plan for 2024.
Sounds good. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you, Michael. All right, we'll move on to item D. Consider approving a resolution authorizing a project under chapters 501 and 505 of the Texas Local Government Code to utilize sales and use tax funds in an amount not to exceed $2 million to partially fund construction of a flight training facility by Angelo State University, subject to City Council approval, and authorizing the Board President to negotiate and execute all necessary documents. Presentation by Michael Dane.
Let me jump in here, Max. Brandon recommends that I recuse myself from this conversation, so
Okay.
I won't participate.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this is a project we've talked a little bit about on the previous slides. Now we'll get into it in a little bit more detail. It's the Angelo State University proposed pilot training facility out at the airport. It's going to be located just north of the Skyline hangar on about 3 acres. ASU does have that land under lease now, and they are moving forward with design of the project. This is a rough floor plan. It's not easy to see, but it's about a 15,000 square foot building all told, and they're estimating that it's going to cost about $6 million. The program, and we've got Dr. Topliff here from ASU that's sort of ramrodding this. My numbers may be a little out of date, so I'll go through the presentation and then ask him to come up and he can update any numbers that I may have not quite right. So in fall of 2023, there's 87 students currently in the program. They're looking to enroll another 38 next spring. They anticipate a total of 200 plus or minus, and I understand now that is up to 250 when they get the program fully up and operational. It's a program for a Bachelor of Commercial Aviation, and I'll let Dr. Topliff go into a little bit more what that involves. Classroom and simulator training for flight certificate through the certified flight instructor and instrument instructor. And they take these students from basically no experience whatsoever all the way through an instructor pilot certification. It's a pretty involved program, and there's a lot of offshoots of it too that where they participate with some of the major airlines and what have you for mentorship programs. Skyline Aviation provides the aircraft for this, so the aircraft are owned by a tax-paying entity, not by ASU, which is a non-tax entity. They currently have 18 aircraft, and these things run 300,000 plus or minus per aircraft, and they have 6 more on order. To meet the 200 students, they would need about 30 aircraft. Generally, it takes about 1 aircraft per 7 students. So, again, 200 students divided by 7, you're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 aircraft. Direct employment, there are 32 certified flight instructors out there now. They would need 40 plus instructors for 200 students, even more for 150. There's about, they use a ratio of about 5 students per instructor. The facility needs, as I said, is the 3-acre airport property, which they now have under lease, 15,000 square foot building. The anticipated cost at the time we did this was $6 million. I believe it's up to about $6.2 million now. And out of that, they had $2 million that they were anticipating from an EDA grant. and I'm not sure if the application has been submitted yet or not. ASU was going to provide $2 million, and then they were asking $2 million from Costa DC. I ran some return on investment calculations, and I've probably run this model 10 times or better. And I also got some input from Dr. Sabias before he left that was pretty helpful. There was a study done in 2009 by ASU that said that the students contribute about $13,000 per student to the local economy every year. I bumped that to $15,000 for this study, probably even more than that, but we'll try to be conservative on all of these. At the end of the day, there's a spin-off advantage of about 108 jobs. The instructor pilots make in the neighborhood of 40,000 to say 45,000 a year. The payback on this is about 13.9 years, the way I have it calculated, and that's probably very conservative. So that would be a return on investment, I think, of about 7%. If you look at the payback with looking at the advantages to not just the city, but also to the county and the school district, that payback then becomes about 8.7 years. We don't usually look at that, but I thought I'd throw that number in this time because this is hard to get a handle on the economic impact of it. We feel like it'll be a lot more, but we don't know how to quantify that, is I guess what I'm saying. So, be happy to answer any questions, and like I say, Dr. Topliff is here to correct all the numbers that I misquoted.
Yeah. I'm curious, I know the goal is to get to 200 students. How many students are in the program currently?
Sorry?
How many students are in the program currently?
Currently, 87, I believe. You can talk better than I can.
So we added 81 new first-time students this fall. So right now, on top of the 58 that were in the program this past year, so we're pushing at 140 students.
Okay. And it's a 4-year program?
It's a 4-year program, that's correct.
Okay. So the goal would be to get to 200 total, or?
Yeah, we actually think we're going to get to 250. Our goal is to be one of the top 5 aviation programs in the United States. Number 1 in Texas, of course.
Cool. Okay. Any questions from the board?
One question, Bob, this one's for you. As far as that lease goes, is there any financial piece of that? Is there any revenue associated with that lease, or is that just part of the incentive?
It's hard to calculate. Sorry. It's hard to calculate, like I say, because the way our model works, it's set up for a typical sort of manufacturing or commercial company. This is a little different, so we've got to kind of put numbers where we think they'll have the desired effect. For example, the students, there is no slot or input for the total spending by a student or an employee or a person or whatever. But there is one for taxable sales. Okay, taxable sales, if you think about it, everything that the students buy, probably just about everything they buy is going to be taxable. So you can plug those numbers in there, and that brings the model in a little more in line.
To answer your question more directly, yes, there is. We pay a lease, monthly lease on that 3 acres out there, and that is set by the airport board. And it is, I think in total, it's just about $20,000 a year for that.
And that is figured in here. Also, the fuel sales, the airport does receive a a portion, I think it's 8 cents a gallon or something like that for it goes to the airport on fuel sales. And we've estimated the fuel sales for the, matter of fact, Jeremy Valgaardson, the airport director, helped me with that to get an estimate of what those would be.
Right.
And that lease, I guess that lease payment, that income goes to the airport, right? That doesn't come back to us?
Yes, it goes to the airport.
Right, okay.
I just wanted to highlight the overall impact that this project has.
Yeah, and I can update you a little bit on the numbers and kind of where we are in this process, if you'd like to know. We received permission from the Texas Tech University System Board of Regents for what we call Stage 2 design. We are in Stage 2 design right now. We've brought on a construction manager at risk, and so that's part of Stage 2. We will go back to the board in November with a GMP, a guaranteed maximum price for this project. Right now, the estimate is we had started out, it's like everything, it's just grown exponentially, seems like. We first thought this was a $4 million project, and then it became a $5 million project, and now in total it's closer to $8 million in total as to what that is. We have a significant amount of that already in the bank, but right now we're about $1.5 million short of where we'd like to be to go to the board in November.
Any other questions? So at this point, what on the agenda is, would be approving a resolution to move forward with that, Brandon? Is that
Yeah, a
correct?
resolution to approve the project,
Right.
and
And then
then
have a
next
public
time we
hearing.
come out and have the public
Public
hearing.
hearing. Okay. Well, any comments from the board? I think it's a great program. I'm in favor of it. My hesitation, obviously, would be just going over what's on the radar and what we have in the account. You know, overextending our budget when we only have, you know, $5.5 million. So if we approve the two, that's going to take a big chunk out and limit all the other things we want to do. So that's my only point of hesitation. I'm all for the program. I think it's great. I think it's great for the community, great for the university, great for the students. That would be my hesitation. I'm inclined, and I'm open, obviously, to discussion, you know, from the board, with you sharing that, you know, you're about $1.5 million short. You know, I'd be more inclined to, you know, approve either that or even say, hey, maybe we'll give you $1 million or commit to $1 million at this point. And again, I'm just kind of spitballing and thinking out loud for discussion purposes, but inclined to maybe say, hey, we'll commit to $1 million, and then as the project goes on and revenues come in and so forth, you know, we'd be open to doing that to, you know, support what we can. But I'm open to feedback and comments from the board, because obviously going all in on this then limits other things that, you know, we have on the radar.
Max, to that point, you know, it's important for them to know what's coming in order to project
Right.
what they need to do and funds that they need to raise. You know, if we handcuff them, you know, to a certain extent and not give them the full idea of what we're going to approve, then I think that's tough. I mean, I'm in full support, and I respect what you're saying, but I think we need to really think about that, to be all in and let them know what's coming their way.
Certainly, we understand budget restrictions. We have those on the campus as well, as you might well know. So we understand those, and we'd be appreciative of any help that we can get. You know, so we understand where you are, but we are kind of in a time crunch on this. We would like to, if we go to the December board and with a GMP, the November board with the GMP, we expect to turn dirt sometime in December with completion of this project. Originally, we wanted to complete it by August, but I think that's probably, with construction materials difficult to get, it's probably going to push it to to December of 24, maybe January 25.
And Jeremy, I can't help but notice you kind of in the background there. Do you have any comments or feedback one way or the other?
absolutely. Jeremy Valgartson, the San Angelo Airport Director. Thank you for the opportunity. First, I want to thank you guys for supporting the airport. I like that the airport's got the highest dollar amount up there. I like to keep it that way. For this program particularly, we ran the numbers, and with the lease revenue plus the fuel flowage, we get 8.5 cents per gallon of fuel sold. For over a year period, we're going to get about $22,000 a year directly to the airport budget. It was a very little amount, right? Very little impact financially. But the big impact from this program is they're going to increase operations by about 38,000 operations per year, based off some environmental projections we got from them. What that does for me is that lets me go back to the FAA, and it helps us compete for more discretionary grant money. It's going to put us higher than Abilene and some of the other airports similar to our size, because the FAA gives that discretionary based off number of operations. An operation is a takeoff and a landing. So when the Diamond's doing all their touch and goes, we log a tremendous amount of operations. We've already started the conversation with the FAA for a parallel runway, just because of the increased operations with the university. So it would be an indirect benefit from having the program here. We could have an additional runway, a bigger runway where we can start enticing more business. So that's kind of how we look at it from a development program. The university is going to help us compete for more opportunity and more potential.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Come on board, Julie.
Julie Efferson. I'm mother of a son who just completed this program in another state. My son did his training at Louisiana Tech and got in. There was a waiting list at that university to get into the aviation program. All of his friends who have graduated have gone on to be very successful pilots, and then within a year and a half's time, they're flying the big jets for Southwest, for American. They start off on the small ones, they train them, and they go, and they have all been very successful. My son chose not to go that route. My son has stayed in Ruston, Louisiana. He is still a certified flight instructor for the university, but he is also a corporate pilot. As San Angelo grows, we are going to need more and more private pilots. So I do think anything we invest in this program, the city will see it back, plus there will be plenty of the students that stay here and fly for the people who can do that. Net jets or even personal stuff. Just wanted to give you my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thank you. And again, I think it's a great program. I'm in total support, just trying to be a good steward of our finances. Actually, with that, talking about finances, Tina, if you don't mind, I'd like to get your kind of input on the impact of approving $2 million. And I think what Michael Dane alluded to earlier with cash flow and projections. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at those already.
We are working on cash flow projections right now, but yeah, Michael's right. You know, when he said that what you approve today doesn't mean that we necessarily write a check today. And so we can look a little closer at that as well. But yeah, I mean, we have right now earmarked in the current budget, the $3 million, for example, for the Skyline project. Mm-hmm. Well, that's been earmarked for quite a while. And so based on the board's direction or philosophy, we could look at, you know, looking at those agreements a little more closely and kind of pushing out those payments in our cash flow projections as well. And so we could bring that back at another meeting as well and kind of go through that too. Okay.
And then, you know, from a financial perspective, that money that is unassigned, in addition to the money that is assigned, like that money earmarked for Skyline, mm-hmm. From reviewing the financials, has been doing pretty well in the way that they're invested, right? So we are yielding a good amount of
yeah, interest income has been performing exceptionally well this year.
Yeah. Where are we at year to date? Do you know roughly?
Jonathan, do you have the financials?
I know you gotta go pretty quick.
So we budgeted $54,000 for interest on investments this year, and so far year to date we've seen $194,000.
All right, so we're
so
up.
it's performing well.
What's that?
That's just on the,
400%, yeah.
and that's just on the economic development side,
Okay.
so.
And that's year to date. So we budgeted 54 and we're up 194? So 4 times?
Yep. So, and then on the ballot side, we budgeted 30,000 and we're at 219.
Okay. And that's year to date, or is that through like June,
Year to
July?
date as of July.
July, okay. So then if we continue on that trajectory, then it's a good opportunity. We might end up, 350, 400,000 in interest income.
Yeah, overall, it looks like this month on the ED side, interest was 30,000, so August, September, maybe another 60. I mean, give or take, depending on how the market does and everything, but.
Yeah. So that gives me a little bit of peace, knowing that, we can maybe pay for some of that off the interest that we're earning on the money that's hasn't been assigned or hasn't been spent yet, in addition to that money, if we did approve it, not being spent tomorrow, but maybe, maybe at some point next year or something, so that we'll still have that opportunity to continue to earn interest on that money.
Yeah, and we'll also exceed our budget for sales and use tax as well this year, so that'll help too. Probably $200,000 or $300,000 over on that, so.
Okay.
Is that good?
May I
Answer your
actually-
questions?
Thank you, Tina. Sorry throwing you on the spot, yeah.
Today, you're officially a finance department employee. Scrounging through positive revenue trends and positive interest income trends is one of the ways they scrounge to try to cover projects. And so that you're into a routine for them. That's what they routinely do.
Yeah.
I do have a question. Dr. Toffler said about $1.5 million short. Is that $1.5 million short including our $2 million? Or does that mean that you need $1.5 million from us?
So the total project budget right now is about 7.4 million. So we have showed 6 here. We've got, so it's kind of complex, but yeah, we're $1.5 million short of what we wanted to build.
Including 2 million that.
No, that does not include the 2 million that we're requesting from you.
Wait, now?
So,
Yeah.
so
So if we approve the 2 million, you're ahead 500,000, or you're?
well, what that would allow us to do would be to do some things in this project that we currently can't do.
Okay.
And we're not trying to build a Taj Mahal, but we do think it's really, really important that it be a facility that when we're recruiting students and people show up, that it looks the part of a number one program. And so that extra 500,000 would do that. But we can do this without that.
Okay.
Dr. Todd, can you remind me again, you probably already said it, but your timeline, when you would need that disbursement?
So we're in the design process right now. We have an estimate of the construction costs. And as I said, right now, that construction estimate's about $1.5 million more than what we have currently. So we're either going to have to cut back on what we're going to do, or we're continuing to look for other sources of funds. We're not looking this is not the only place that we're looking for funds. Does that answer your question?
It does, and to Max's point of what projects we have on the horizon, on the radar, right, that may not break ground for 2 years. So can we, disperse this in between now and that time, and so just look at all aspects, like you said. So that's why I was asking about your timeline.
Yeah, our timeline is advancing pretty quickly. We would like to have a guaranteed maximum price to the Board of Regents. Well, we will have a GMP to the Board of Regents in November. November 10th, 11th, somewhere right along in there. Our hope is to turn dirt sometime in late December and get this project on the move.
Okay. And then as far as, I guess, Bob, I'll go to you, because usually in projects, and I guess this is not really spelled out here, but typically there's phases right? So we would say, all right, we'll give you this or reimburse this or upon completion of that. So what would this look like? upon approval?
We could certainly get together with Dr. Topliff and look at trying to phase it out.
Yeah, we don't have to write the check on November the 11th.
Right, no, that's what I'm getting to,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. Because again, if that
So-
money,
So like with all construction project, there'll be, draws to the contractors at various phases throughout the project.
right,
We could maybe do something like on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis or whatever. And that might start, we can structure the agreement such that maybe it didn't start until, I don't know, sometime in 2024.
Yeah, could be first quarter of 2024.
right.
Or maybe excuse me for putting it this way, but maybe our money comes in at the end of the project.
Right, that's kind of what I'm getting to. And again, just giving the board an opportunity to maximize the interest potential and income that we're
Sure.
getting to then offset some of that cost. That's kind of where I'm
Yeah,
going.
we're certainly not expecting a check in
Right.
November.
Okay. Yeah, I think if we could kind of structure, something like that, I think, again, doing our due diligence and
So staff could work on something like that. The board could either authorize, typically the board authorizes the board president to negotiate and execute an agreement.
Right.
We can do this on that basis. We could bring something back to the full board. We could do a committee to look at it and work with ASU to sort of stage it. And, I think we're open. And
Yeah, that increases.
jump in there if I'm getting over my skis.
Yeah, that definitely increases my comfort level, again, from a budgetary perspective. I'm total support of it, philosophically, and I think it's great for the community, et cetera. Just looking at it from a budgetary, because we have a lot of things on the radar, and we want to do them all, but obviously we have to, be selective and careful as we move forward and be good stewards, so. Okay. Any other questions from?
Yeah, I do have a question. If we approve 1.5 million, for example, you're 500,000 short for the amenities or whatever else that you want to add, is there time to raise that from other sources?
Well, we're continuing to raise money right now.
And what's the prospect of those?
So the EDA grant, we have submitted that EDA grant. We don't know what the outcome of that's going to be yet. So, we're continuing to look for money to make this project as something that we can all look at and go, wow, that's really cool.
So do you have to have the money raised or committed at the time that you present it to your board? Or
Yeah,
do you
we'll
have time to
We'll have to have the
total budget?
construction funds committed. Now, if there are additional amenities or things like that, those could be added on later. For example, AV equipment inside the facility. By the way, I will tell you that we got a grant for $70,000 committed yesterday from Southwest Airlines to buy 2 new simulators that will be in this facility. So we're continuing to raise money for the program from every source that we can identify.
Thank you, Doctor.
You're welcome.
All right, well, does someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion for the 2 million.
Second.
Okay. So we have first by Director Mahaffey, second by Director Gomez. Any discussion? All those in-
Is that going to be, if I can just get clarification, is that going to be for you to negotiate and execute,
I mean, that's,
not to exceed 2 million?
I don't think so. Is that your intent?
Right, if I need to word that exactly
Okay.
that way, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, so all those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Me, nay.
Okay. All right, well, then it passes 4-1. All right, thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate the commitment of the city to this project, to ASU. I'll tell you also that Howard College is probably going to start an A&P program associated with this, airframe and power plant mechanics program. So this is going to benefit the entire community.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, we'll move on to item E, update regarding the Economic Development Director position and search process, presentation by Michael Dane.
Good morning again. Michael Dane, Interim Economic Development Director. This is an update on the search for a permanent Economic Development Director. At this point, we are contemplating pressing pause on that search. We're having difficulty finding candidates, and we need to make progress on initiatives we've just talked about. And so at this point, Daniel and I are having a discussion about pressing pause on that, moving ahead with the staff we have for now. One of the benefits is we save a little money, but the market is difficult right now. Economic development professionals are in high demand, and it's a tough market out there. Yes, sir.
Are you at liberty to discuss the proposed salary range you've been using in the search to this point?
I am. I don't know specifically what they've promoted, but we've been talking about the a range in the $140,000 a year amount.
And the recruitment firm that you've been using, have they felt like that was an adequate salary range to provide a strong pool of candidates?
I can't speak for them directly, but I think they did counsel that that would be a challenging range. Not impossible, but certainly challenging.
And you noted a moment ago that by hitting pause, and I assume that means you would continue in your dual role.
Yes, although we have started a discussion about a greater commitment time-wise to COSA DC than we've had in the past.
On your part?
On my part, absolutely.
I'm just wondering, when you say we're saving money on this money all comes out of the administrative services contract between COSA DC and the city, right?
It does.
Okay. I'm wondering if the savings that we've experienced over the past year, because I believe we're right at a year now, I'm assuming that money is sitting in the fund balance that we mentioned earlier, right?
Yes, it's here in COSA DC.
And that, I'm assuming that's split between ballot and economic development?
Yes.
Both sides pay for the salary?
Yes.
Might that not provide a pool of resources that could be used to augment or sweeten any future offer in terms of perhaps a signing bonus or a higher salary, as long as we're saving money? Here comes our CFO to answer these many questions.
Salaries are all paid on the economic development side.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Woo, I didn't know what she was going to say.
You never know. You ask the wrong question, you might not get an answer that you like. Anyway, I'm just thinking, if we're saving money while we hit pause, maybe it doesn't make any sense, but I'd like to think maybe we could earmark that money to have it be a more competitive salary. I realize there are issues here from the corporation's point of view. We just want to hire a high-quality director. And so we only have one director that we employ. And so our concerns about that salary range vis-a-vis that of other directors in the city is not as great. I certainly understand from the city's point of view, there are a number of directors or executive directors. And so when you go up on the salary to hire one, then that has ripple effects throughout the organization.
It does.
We have the same thing at Angelo State. So I certainly understand that as a constraint. But from our point of view, from my point of view, at least anyway, I realize it's a burden on you, and you may be reallocating some of your time. But I would be hopeful that we could move forward on the search sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and I'd be inclined to add that if, to the strategic priorities as well as for further discussion and evaluation, I guess if we're going to talk about it in October or so, November.
Michael, you're talking about the pause, the interim, more time commitment from you guys, from you, as well as the staff. I mean, that's going to put more of a burden on them as well, I would feel. They've been kind of pulling the rope to an extent over the last year. Has there been a discussion that if you are going to have more of a time commitment, to potentially bring in someone else to at least help staff with their daily functions and maybe at a lower, I shouldn't say lower level, but different position type?
We have not, but one of the things that has an idea that's been kicked around is, are our programs what they ought to be? Do we need a different program? Do we need an additional program? If we're going to have to play good defense on those time commitments, so that we can manage the workload with the existing staff. And so, getting the best bang for the buck, not only from a dollars perspective, but from a time perspective is important. For example, on their own, Nora and the SBDC streamline the business plan competition to get to the result with fewer steps involved. We think that's a good move. They did that on their own. It didn't have anything to do with this situation.
I'm familiar, at least in higher education, that there are organizations that have a group of individuals, retired individuals, who are competent in various areas. And if an institution finds themselves needing an interim person for 6 months or a year, they can contact that organization and they will send them an interim person who already knows that job that can help them out while they press pause or step back to start the search a little bit later on. To your knowledge, is there anything similar in terms of city government where there's a pool of retired executives that make themselves available to come in and help for 6 months or to a year?
There is on the city government side. There's a placement firm which tries to promote that capability, both from benefiting the city's perspective and providing that benefit to managers in transition. As far as that capability associated with economic development corporations, I don't know how much would be available there, but that would be something we would likely discuss with them.
Well, since you wear two hats, it could be someone that picks up the slack on the assistant city manager side, allowing you to devote more of your resources to Costa DC.
That's a good point. What I would say is that if this is going to be our path forward, I'd like sometime to have that candid conversation with you individually about what you think our needs are from this position and what are we not getting that you'd like to see, or what would you like to get that we haven't talked about before that you would really kind of had in mind to place on a new director. And so I'd very much like to have that conversation with you, because either way we need to work that into our expectations for this position. And so
I do want to give a thanks though, publicly, thank you guys and the staff for stepping up in this interim spot. Like Dr. Jones said, it's kind of all over. It's higher education, it's different areas. So thank you guys for stepping up.
Well, I think we would say thank you also. Bob and Nora and I each are receiving approximately a 9% temporary bump associated with this situation, and we appreciate that. But again, associated with strategic priorities. We want to know what the priorities are for the organization, and then we want to staff accordingly. I would say that if the priorities don't suggest we need the position, then we take a break. But if there's a high energy or a high input effort that is a priority, then we need to take a look at it. But I think we talked about this based on status quo for priorities. If that's the case, we think we can handle it, at least temporarily. And so we'll give it a try. The other thing is, this is getting off into a personal opinion, but I think when you're in a large organization, especially a tax-funded organization, if you've got staff willing to try something new that might save money and get you the same result, I think we ought to give it a try. Creativity and taking a risk on a creative or a different direction sometimes is a little lacking. And so I like the idea that we would try something new and different and see if we can get the result we want. And if we're not, then I think we ought to say what that result is that we're not getting.
I'm wondering, and Brandon may be able to answer this question for us, in the administrative services agreement between the corporation and the city, off the top of my head, I don't remember, does that agreement speak to these circumstances in any way if the city is struggling to identify qualified individuals to provide these services for the corporation?
Now, I mean, their obligations are to adequately staff for the tasks that are outlined in the economic development side. So I'd have to look back at it to see if it specifically says you have to have a director, but from my recall, it's just adequate staff to perform those specified functions in the contract. And so long as that's being done, I mean, I think the city would be fulfilling that contract.
So that's just a judgment that would be made by the corporation as to whether or not the city was adequately providing
Yeah,
these
absolutely.
services?
I mean, if the corporation felt like, they weren't living up to the obligations in the contract, that's certainly a notice under the contract that you could give the city manager's office and have that addressed.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Michael. All right, moving on to number 6, closed session. Executive session under the provision of Government Code Title V, Open Government Ethics, Subtitle A, Open Government, Chapter 551, Open Meeting, Subchapter D. Exceptions to requirements that meetings be open under the following sections. A, Section 551.087, Business Prospect Negotiations regarding 1, Project BEST, 2, Technology Tower, 3, Project Braided Main, 4, Project Reserve, 5, Project Scatter, 6, Project Aquatex. It is 10:08, and we will now move to closed session. 42, and we are out of closed session. We'll move on to item 7, follow-up and administrative issues. A, consideration and possible actions of items discussed in closed session if needed, and there are none. B, announcements and consideration of future agenda items. Do we have any? No? If not, then we'll move on to number 8, and we'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Okay, we have a first, Director Jones, second, Director Mahaffey. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, it is 10:43. We are done. Thank you, everyone.